Tuesday at 2 p.m. is this, otherwise known as the ROMKids Show. Hello, everyone. Exciting to be with you today. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to take you on a journey through science, art, and history. We're going to talk about bats with Mammalogist Burton Lim. We are going to do some art today as well. We're going to make our own bat craft with magic paper towel. We have so many things that we are going to cover in this really awesome episode all about bats. We're even going to talk a little bit about COVID-19 and vaccines today and try and demystify some misunderstandings that folks have about these flying mammals. Everyone, my name is Kiran Mukherjee. I run the camps here at the Royal Ontario Museum, and the ROMKids Show is our distance learning sort of alternative to folks while we can't have camp at the ROM or have people at the museum. And we're just going to hang out and talk about some cool things. And I think with that, I feel pretty good about doing the theme song portion of the event. As you can see on the right-hand side, you can see all different sorts of other art we have done on this show in, what is this, season 2, I think? Maybe 3. We did slime last week, which was really fun, with Charlotte Chafee. We had Mark Peck on a while ago where we made bird feeders. We had paleontologist Ashley Reynolds on where we made those saber-toothed cats. So many fun things. Oh, we had Dr. Kim Tate on, talking all about the latest stuff going on with perseverance. All of those episodes can be found up on YouTube as well. So welcome to everyone from their classrooms. Welcome to everyone from their kitchens. We are excited to begin now actual time for the theme song portion of the event. Welcome to the ROMKids Show with me. We'll do some crafts and tell some stories. Let's talk about science, art, and history. Welcome to the ROMKids Show, starring you and me. There we go. That's the theme song portion of the event out of the way. And it's now time to move on over to the art table, where we're going to get started on what's going to be a great, fascinating episode. I wanted to do this episode for so long. I'm so thankful Burton is with us today. So, what are we making before we get to our celebrity guest and expert? We are making these really fun clothespin bats with paper towel art wings. And look at this. When you're all done, you can hang it upside down somewhere. Just like a bat, sleeping at night, or I guess sleeping during the day. We're going to talk about that. You can see it, I'm covering the face, but there you go. All right, I like it. It's a lot of fun. Bats. What do you need? You need a clothespin. All right, those kind of necessary for this project. You need paper towel. You can also use a coffee filter, and I think a coffee filter might work really, really well with this project, but we don't have any coffee filters in our household, so you can use paper towel. You need some scissors, you need a black Sharpie, you need some tape, and you need some paper to make some ears and some eyes, which I don't really want to lose my eyes so early in the show. I've been really scared about that, but that's something there. And then finally, you need markers. Your markers should be darker markers. Like, you can do whatever you want. It's just art, but the darker the marker, I think it adds to the theme. Look at that. Like, it just clips right upside down. I'm very thrilled with this project. With that said, it is now time to welcome to the show our guest today, Burton Lim, mammalogist. Welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot. It's great to be here.
Burton is our resident Batman at the Royal Ontario Museum. He studies all sorts of mammals, but I think his expertise really lies with bats. I wore my Batman socks today out of solidarity with having Burton on the show. But thank you so much for being here. We have a lot to cover. The first thing, though, I want to give you the first step of your project. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your paper towel, you're going to fold it right in half, because you need to make a circle, all right? And just go like that, and then this is the hack for making a circle. You then just cut out your wing. Okay, you're just gonna cut a circle half this way, half that way, and then you're done. You have a circle. That is your very first step. But before I do that, Burton, you love bats so much. I've seen how many bats you have in the collections at the ROM. What is it about bats that's so exciting to you?
Well, for me, bats are unique mammals because they're the only ones that fly. And most of the bats, they echolocate, so that allows them to navigate in total darkness, which I think is pretty cool because I can just imagine myself walking around at night, like in the forest. I'd be bumping into trees, and bats do it while flying faster than I can walk. So that's pretty amazing.
Bats are super cool. I have a question for you. Are bats, like I know there's bats in Canada, like I know there's definitely bats in Toronto. Are bats found on every continent?
Every continent except Antarctica.
What?
Because basically, if there are trees around, you'll find bats.
That's so cool. I actually was really interested in knowing that, if bats actually come from everywhere. What is hello, Miss Weiss class. Nice to see you all here. Very excited. Okay, sorry. What is the scientific name for a bat specialist?
That is a great question. Even I don't use, I'll give the name chiroptologist, but I think this is the first time I've ever really said it aloud.
That's awesome. Great.
I call myself a bat researcher.
Bat researcher, I like that. Okay, next step in your project, I did my circle. It kind of looks like a shield, but like let's go with it. You're going to use your darker washable markers in any type of design. Just you can use splotches, you could do a drawing, whatever you want, fill up your paper towel. Okay, so Burton, there's a lot of misconceptions about bats, and we want to clear up some of these misconceptions for our friends today. So if you have any questions about bats, please feel free to put them in the group chat below. But one of my questions is, do all bats drink blood? Like, what's the drinking blood connection in bats?
Well, there are over 1,400 species of bats, but only 3 of those species actually drink blood, and those are the vampire bats.
Whoa, so there's over 1,000 different species of bats, but only 3
1,400, 1,400.
Whoa, that's so many different bats, and that is a very small amount of them that actually drink blood. What are some things that bats do eat?
Well, all the bats in Canada, they eat insects, but when you get into tropical places further south, you'll get fruit-eating bats and nectar-feeding bats, and some bats specialize on frogs, some specialize on fish. So bats eat a huge variety of different food types.
So you heard it here. This is the Royal Ontario Museum. We're based in Toronto. No bats in Canada drink blood. So that's one thing that we should take away here. Should I be? Okay. We have a great question from the chat for you. Why do bats hang upside down?
That is another great question. There are different theories about that. One of them is related to bats flying. Birds have legs, so they sort of run and take off, or they perch and take off. Whereas bats, being that they fly, their legs aren't developed, so they hang when they roost. For them to fly, they have to drop a little bit before they take flight. So that's their strategy of flying. So birds did a little bit differently. Bats did it another way.
That's honestly so cool. It's like they need the momentum of falling to get going.
Yeah.
That's a huge fact. You heard it here, right here. That's a huge fact. Okay. Are bats dangerous?
No, bats aren't dangerous, but they are beneficial. So they do a lot of great things. So the bats in Canada are insect feeders. So they eat a lot of potential pests for agricultural, food crops. But again, the bats, in tropical places, they pollinate flowers, they disperse seeds. So they're actually good for reforestation.
I love that so much. Okay, so if you are, an outdoors person, you like being outdoors, you want to love bats because they eat insects, okay? And among them, they eat those mosquitoes, those pesky mosquitoes that we all don't like. If you like fruit or food that comes from pollination, you love bats because they allow for that pollination. So bats, not dangerous. In fact, very useful to a functioning society. You sort of talked about this a little bit off the top, in echolocation, and you thought that was a really cool thing. Are bats blind?
No, all bats have eyes and they all see. And in fact, their night vision is better than our night vision. So basically, they don't have color vision. So our color vision is better, so daytime vision, but they see shades of gray. So they have a better ability of picking up all the different light, the little bit of light at night. So if there is any light at night, they'll pick it up better than we can pick up.
Okay, so there's another big one. They can see better at night than we can. I'm showing some pictures right now that you've taken over the years. And if you are on Twitter, a great Twitter account to follow is at Burton Lim. Not only is Burton, knows so much about bats and knows so much about science, but he's actually a really incredible photographer as well. I'm showing a bunch of photos of bats. They all have there's a great diversity in the way that they look. What's going on with that?
Well, some of those pictures you might see it. They might have all of these sort of appendages, these things coming from their face, but that helps those bats echolocate. Basically, it allows them to focus their echolocation as they send it out. And some of them have big ears, so those big ears are like satellite dishes. So they help receive the echoes coming back, so they know what's in front of them.
They're like satellite dishes. They help you hear. They're nice and big to allow you to understand all that bouncing echolocation going on. Burton, this is already like a really good show. Okay, I'm learning so much. Okay, now going back to my art project real quick. So fun fact, I went into the ROM this weekend specifically to get markers that had ink left in them, and then look what happened. They don't have ink in them. So that was kind of a trip that I made. That's funny. So I used purples and frankly a very starting to run out blue marker as well. Here. We got some more markers coming in. Let's continue with the conversation while I put some more ink onto my piece of art right here. Okay, so we've covered some misconceptions, some misinformation, some misunderstandings about bats. We really shouldn't be afraid of them, and in fact, we should be big supporters of them because of all they do for society. Now, obviously, bats have been in the news a lot over the last sort of year in relation to COVID-19 and the pandemic. So we're going to try and break down what's going on here and try and have like a thoughtful discussion about bats in this case. So what is, I guess, the connection between bats and the coronavirus?
Bats have a lot of coronaviruses, and the coronavirus that is causing the COVID-19 pandemic that we're in right now, as far as you know, the closest virus is closest to a bat, but it's still like 5% different in its DNA, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but 5% difference in DNA is a lot. So that means the bat coronavirus is not the same coronavirus that is causing COVID-19. So there's been quite a few mutations that have occurred, for it to get to humans. So that means it didn't go from bats directly to humans. It went through another intermediate host, another animal.
So that's really important, okay? Because a lot of news and a lot of information that's come out in the last year has, attempted to create a direct link from bats to humans. And while the bat component is real, that it was in a bat, there may have been several other animals before it got to a human, right? That's where we're going with
That's correct. Yep, absolutely right.
Okay, we have a question from our group chat, and then we're gonna go back into this conversation right here. Do bats bite humans?
There have been reports of bats feeding on humans. Usually, if there is areas that have a lot of domestic animals, like either cattle or horses, basically where people live, whether it's in grassy area, like savanna regions, or they've cleared the forest, the rainforest, to grow other crops. Cows and horses, they just lie around, they sleep at night, so they are perfect prey for vampire bats. A ready supply of food. but also people might be also obviously living in the area, so they end up becoming potential, prey items for vampire bats.
So you don't really have to worry too much about them, especially if you're living in a place like Canada. Remember, of the 1,400 bats in the world, only 3 of them drink blood. Okay, so we have a question here, which is going to bring us back into our conversation about the pandemic. Do bats have rabies?
Bats have rabies. Rabies is a mammal virus. So any mammal can have rabies, and any mammal can transmit the rabies virus. So yes, bats do have rabies.
And so that's another thing too, right? Like think about all your pets at home too. Like a dog can potentially have rabies as well. So we don't want to be too worried or alarmist when it comes to like trying to pin all of like these bad things on bats, because lots of animals can have zoonotic disease, right? That's our big word today. Zoonosis or zoonotic diseases are diseases that start in an animal and then travel into a human.
Yep, that's right.
And so that's the same thing that we're seeing with like the pandemic we're in right now. It was in a bat, and then it was another animal, and maybe several other animals we still don't know, and then eventually it got into humans. Now, our next step on our art project, okay, is what you're going to do with your water is you're just going to paint and dab at it. And what the markers are going to do is they're going to bleed into each other and create a really cool sort of marbling effect. This is the magic part. Okay, so how do viruses transfer from animals into humans? How do these zoonotic diseases happen?
Well, viruses are very, very tricky. They can be transferred to humans in a number of ways. So the COVID-19 pandemic, so that coronavirus was through respiratory methods. So if people are sick with the virus, they cough, it gets airborne. And then if you're close by somebody, they'll breathe it in and it gets through your lungs. Other viruses are transmitted by mosquitoes like Zika. So that's, from a bite of a mosquito. Similar to rabies, so that's a bite. Yeah, so the rabies is specifically the salivary glands. So when a rabid animal bites, another animal, it's transferred from the saliva to the blood system. So there are a number of different transmission methods for viruses.
Mm-hmm. And that especially happens when there's almost like the more close that people are to animals, there's more likely of a chance of these zoonotic diseases happening. In the same way that you were talking about like vampire bats, and vampire bats are near where the cattle and the horses are. Humans are there too. Then they sort of can sometimes be feast for these bats. But the more close that humans live to animals and enter wild spaces, the more likely we have for more of these types of diseases to occur.
Yeah. So basically, if there's a lot of, sort of expansion or development going on, there's going to be a greater chance that there will be an encounter between a wild animal and humans that, normally wouldn't happen under, sort of normal or natural conditions. But as, we encroach on wild habitats, those chances of encountering other animals, they increase.
And this can happen anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter where you are. These types of encounters where these diseases can transfer over, it can happen anywhere in the world where we're starting to butt up against wild spaces. Now, the other big takeaway I want everyone to take away today is that it's not just bats that can transfer these types of viruses or diseases, okay? Lots of other animals can too. What are some other animals that can do this?
Well, there's like, swine flu. So that's transmitted, through pigs. So again, with, domestic, livestock and stuff like that. So that happens more often in farm settings. So that's another animal connection there with the pigs.
We can see this too with like birds. We can see this again like dogs and rabies. We can see this with non-human primates. There's lots of ways that this can happen, and the best way for us to sort of prevent these transmissions from occurring is to try and to not keep expanding into wild spaces, okay? And let wild spaces exist as they originally did, okay? It's important that we let some spaces just be for wildlife and not continue to always expand. It helps us, and it also protects our biodiversity as well. Okay, so we covered a lot there. Thank you, Burton. That was a really important part for us to get across to our friends at home and at school. As you can see, I finished watering, painting my paper towel art. You're gonna put that aside to dry, and once it's dry, you're gonna cut some wings out. And you can see how I did that here, where I folded it in half and then I cut out some wings, all right? And I did not come prepared with a piece to cut out because I was so excited about doing this. But what I want you to do is I want you to, with your Sharpie, I want you to color in your clip, and you can do it black or brown because that tends to be the type of fur that bats have. Now, Burton, still on this topic, we're all very excited about vaccines. The ROM's collection, though, the bat collection that you work with, has been in the news recently. Some of your colleagues at Western University in Ontario are studying bats to see what other coronaviruses might be in them. Can you tell a little bit more about the study that's happening here?
Yeah, so there are some virologists at Western that they are trying to screen or survey for the different types of coronaviruses. So not, just the one that caused COVID-19 or even SARS from 2003. So basically they're trying to prepare for the next pandemic whenever that happens. So so hopefully when the next, virus outbreak occurs, that they'll have, vaccines that are close to that particular virus prepared. So this way, it's getting a head start on, the next, pandemic when it happens.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to build like this little database of all of these other types of viruses that might be out there, so we can start some of the work on vaccines for the future, because that might be really, really useful. Because as we know, even though we say here on the show, like we should stop human encroachment onto wild spaces, it's still happening. And so it's good to be prepared. Now, the ROM's bats, the bats that you look after at the ROM, are playing a really important role in this research. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I've been doing bat research and field work for over 30 years now. So over the years, we've built up a fairly good collection of not just bats, but mammals in general. And as part of that collection, we also have been saving frozen tissues for DNA study. We've ended up building a very valuable resource based at the ROM. So not only, for my own research interests in looking at biodiversity and evolution of mammals and bats, but now also, for medical implications, as we're seeing with the study with Western. So it's becoming a very valuable resource and one of the best frozen bat tissue collections in the world.
And I think that's like, you don't start out a bat collection with the purpose of maybe preventing a future pandemic, but certainly that's been really, really useful because we can like go through them and maybe get a sneak peek at what's to come. As we sort of wrap up, we got a couple more questions here for Burton. I've sort of, are all bats black and brown, or are there any, do any of them come in other colors?
There are a few other colors, but most of them are a dark color. So remember, bats are only active at night. So it's, again, unlike birds where they're active primarily in the daytime, where, colorful, feathers, make them obvious, for mating purposes. Whereas bats, color doesn't make a huge that much of a difference. But there are a few bats that are orange in color or red in color, but most of them are sort of black or brown or darkish fur color.
I've never thought about it that way, but it's like it's at nighttime, so you can't really see much anyway.
Exactly.
And as you were saying earlier, they don't see color; they see things in grays.
Yeah.
That was a really good question. I really liked that. Okay, so what you're going to do as well is then cut out, maybe draw some little ears. Remember, as Burton was talking about earlier, some bats have really dynamic and large, expansive ears because that sort of lets them hear better. You can stick them on the bat. I've then also, I've already lost my eyes that I made before the show, but then you can stick on your little eyes at the front, and you do it on the side that doesn't open, okay? Because the side that opens is going to be your bat's feet. You can glue all those things on, and then you got a little bat like that, and remember, it sticks to your hand. Now, another idea that we had in our household is if you had, what are those things called? Pipe cleaner? You could attach a pipe cleaner on the side of your wing so it has some definition and form, and then it can close up, like it's sleeping at night. So I would, if anyone does that, please send me a pic. I would love to see that. Okay. Now we have a question about, you do a lot of field work, and again, check out Burton's Twitter because he has a lot of photos. How many bats do you think you've seen in your entire life?
Oh, another great question. I didn't come prepared. I'm guessing several hundred. I'm guessing about 300 to 400 species of bats out of those 1,400. So I'm not even close to all of them, but about 300 or 400.
It's still about a third of all the bats out there. Okay, so we have a question about eating animals and then transmission of viruses. That's one sort of transmission point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, but another thing to keep in mind too is that it changes depending on the type of animal. So if you look at the Zika virus that happened, that was transmitted by mosquitoes in many cases.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways that transmission can occur between animals and humans. And again, the best way for us to do this is to try and protect wildlife, to protect wild spaces, and to stop encroachment onto these spaces. And with that, Burton, thank you so much for joining the show today to talk about bats. We had a lot of things that we wanted to cover. Thanks for being here, man.
Well, thanks for having me. And those are all great questions I was getting from people. So that was very good. Thanks a lot.
This was great. We covered a lot of misinformation about bats today on the ROMKids Show. We'll be back again next week. We're really excited for that. Remember, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. right here on the ROM Toronto Instagram account. This episode will be up on YouTube later this week. So if you're watching on YouTube, hey, what's going on? Nice to see you. Nice to hang out with you in your classroom or in your household. And with that, we're all done. Stay safe, everyone. Wear a mask. We love you. Bye, friends.
Bye. See you.